Good morning, everyone. I'm here with Fiona McNamara, Labor's candidate in Brisbane, representing the Prime Minister. But looking at all of you, what I realise is that one of the privileges of being a parent and a husband is actually that special, amazing time of the day when you come home from work. You open the gate, you walk up the path, you unlock the door. If you've got a 3-year-old, they're normally pretty happy to see you. If you've got a teenager, it's all right if they grunt at you from their screen. Provided you left on good terms with your wife that morning, she'll give you a hug. You always know the dog's happy to see you. But isn't that what life's all about? Life is all about not just our work, but coming home from work. And this year, not 100 years ago, but this year, there'll be hundreds of Australian families who will get a knock at the door, they'll get a telephone call, and it will be unbearable, irreplaceable news that the person you saw go to work that morning, or maybe they left before you were up, will not be coming home, has suffered a grievous injury. And what will go through your mind is, I wish I had said how much I miss them. This is the terrible feature of traumatic death. You never get a chance to say goodbye. You never get a chance to take back the crosswords and tell them how much you love them. Tomorrow, as we should, we'll be commemorating the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice made by our service people. And it doesn't matter if it was Gallipoli or the efforts being made by young men and women today in Afghanistan. These are people who put themselves in harm's way, and unfortunately harm can come. But there is less acclaim for what happens in Australia when people die at work. Australian workers are people who work hard. You represent people here today who are productive, who are profitable, who have a sense of humour and like to have a good job. But we are here today representing people who, through no fault of their own, never came home. And it is good that we venerate these people and acknowledge them. But let's tell each other the truth. Workplace deaths all too often have a stupid pointlessness about them, which means they should never have happened. A sudden, often predictable lining up of the small daily hazards when a bunch of risks on a construction site can gang up on you and then a catastrophe occurs. Things as mundane as electrocution, falling scaffolding, unhealthy air in a confined space, an unguarded piece of machinery, the spinning hammers of a crusher which should have been guarded. 45 Australians, people like you and me and our families, have already died at work this year in Australia. These are not heroic deaths. They are tragic, they are pointless, and they are painfully predictable in too many cases. Did you know that the average age of an Australian who dies at work is 37 years old? 37, the record books tell us, was the age that Albert Einstein invented his theory of relativity. 37 would be the average age of plenty of people here at this meeting. Can you close your eyes and imagine what we have lost through the premature death of our fellow Australians? The unfinished business of love and family, of parenting, of arguments with the in-laws at Christmas, of the grandchildren that you never met. I've represented workers my whole life. I've seen firsthand the guilt and the grief, the anger and the despair felt by colleagues and workmates and employers. I have attended hospital wards where workers have received terrible burns, where people have had their limbs amputated through an incident at work. I have visited grieving mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives after a fatality, and I watched the families try and recapture the essence of the person who was lost in the stories of their life. It is not possible to give these workplace deaths meaning, because they should never happen. Workplace fatalities are not accidents. I hate that word accident. It implies that nothing could be done to have stopped what happened. There is never an accident at work which kills a person. There is never an accident at work which seriously injures a person. Everything is preventable. It is not the failure of a system or a hazard identification or a risk assessment. All those handsome words which have no tears in them, which avoid the blame and responsibility. What kills people in Australia is the failure that springs like a ready-made monster from ignoring the issues, from not dealing with the little hazards before they become killer hazards. Too many Australians will die this year because of small little things which could be fixed. Guarding on machinery, entry into the confined spaces, the lack of proper lights or effective reverse alarms on mobile plant, dangerous equipment, unstable vehicles like quad bikes, which is now the leading killer of Australia's farmers and their children. Scaffolding should never fall. Untrained and unsupervised use of hazardous chemicals should never happen. Workplace bullying, damaging people forever. Exposure to lung-killing asbestos fibres. And not only the traumatic injury, but how many people now are suffering and dying from industrial diseases. We are by and large members of the Labor movement. We say that close enough is never good enough. We say that close enough is never good enough for workplace health and safety. We belong to a movement which fights the case against unfairness, compensation, rehabilitation. We constantly struggle to improve health and safety. It is your union officials and delegates who are there to console and support the families of the lost ones. So in conclusion, you must believe on this important day, where we recognise all the people who have needlessly been taken from us, that those who would seek to say there is no role for the Labor movement in Australia, that those who say that the day of the union is finished, those who say that we are part of history and not the future, go tell seriously injured workers in chronic pain who cannot lift their kids anymore that there are no more problems. Go tell the families and the mates of dead workers that everything's okay. Tell that to the victims of workplace bullying. Tell it to the women who get discriminated on their return to work once they've had a baby. Tell it to the men and women who struggle on asbestos still. To say that the work of the Labor movement is done today is to ignore the pointless deaths and serious injuries of hundreds of people. There will be, since this rally started, some worker somewhere in Australia who's had a bone broken nearly every hour. There will be someone who has suffered an injury as we talk in Australia. You are the eyes and ears of work. You are the people who understand the importance of safety. It is one thing at the funeral of a dead worker to cry tears about a lost treasure. These people were treasure when they were alive. Why on earth do we only understand their treasure when they're gone? It is a long journey, but we must be intolerant of the small daily hazards which lead to that catastrophe. It's not too expensive. There are no excuses. We cannot rely on paperwork alone to keep people alive. The safest workplaces are the workplaces where trust and respect live. To say that workplace injuries are part and parcel of doing business in Australia, it is not the price for profit that we pay. That is ignorant, it is uncivilised. You are here today because you know and believe in Australia where people come home safely. We know and love our state, we know and love our country, we know and love that we can send people home safely. We are better than our numbers indicate, we are smarter than the current fatalities, and I believe it is possible, indeed necessary, to demand an Australia where everyone goes home safely. That should be our goal, nothing less. Thank you very much.